Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 8. We're getting close to being done, so keep at the projects, keep at the discussion boards. You guys have been doing really good with that, so just make sure that you're keeping on top of that. A couple announcements for this week. Graduate students, you have a second annotation due by Wednesday, and the quicker you get that back, the quicker I'll turn it around and give you some feedback. That project is going to be due week 9, just as a reminder. And you'll also be submitting with your groups the test plan this week. So that's going to be the usability test plan. And after you submit it, you should start working at implementing it. Make sure that you're getting your participants and everything you need. If there's any questions, either email me or feel free to leave a message on the discussion board. So for this week, we're going to be talking about some case studies. And by this, I mean there may not have been actual usability testing behind it. There may or may not have been, but they're authors who are looking at a certain document, suggesting revisions, sometimes based on other people's research, and providing that back. And in this case, the client is the IRS. So what we're looking at are publications that are government forms produced by the IRS. Now, you can find these documents in the course documents folder. There should be 4 or 5 documents if I remember right. So you want to make sure that you go through those. And it's also very helpful if you have the Matchett and Ray article out as we discuss it. So Matchett and Ray are approached in 1989 to revamp one of the IRS forms. So they want to revise 1040 EZ form and instructions. A lot of you had mentioned in your discussion post finding confusion on government forms or especially financial aid for students. That's definitely something that a lot of people have trouble with. So this is why the IRS wanted to do some sort of usability project to see what sort of redesign someone might come up with. So on the first page in the last column, they start talking about audience. And audience is a lot harder for government forms. You can see that they talk about, well, the audience might be everyone in America. Even children have to fill out this form, so most likely a parent doing this for a child. But this is a form that's required for everyone, whether you're a legal resident or an illegal resident, you're required to complete this form. So the audience is very varied. It's varied by geographic region, it varies by age, it varies by literacy level, it varies by experience with the English language, it varies by past experience. Maybe you've done this form every year of your life for the past 15 years, or maybe you have to do it for the first time. So there's a really wide audience for this one. And then now, due to a time constraint, Matchett and Ray can't complete a full usability study. So their recommendations in this case study are actually based on research of others. So they end up doing a feature analysis and they put together 4 key areas that they want to focus on. So that's organization, readability, tone, and visual appearance. Now, again, these recommendations are going to be based on other people's research, but still, you can kind of see as we go through these, you'll see that the ideas seem in line with what we've been discussing all along. Maybe you'll even recognize some of your ideas that you shared in your documentation project. So they also propose adding 4 pages of content, and I want to talk about that here because revisions don't always mean you're going to make the document shorter. If there is a case where the document needs more information and it has to be longer, then that's completely acceptable. So what they do to balance this out, they say, yes, it's going to be a longer document, but we're going to do a table of contents. We're going to have that table so users can jump around to different sections if they need to and find the information that they really want. So when we're talking about a table of contents, you can see some of the information that they wanted to add in this column on the right here. You'll see the IRS versions and then what they're suggesting that they change. So you can see even there that there's a lot more information, like what if a taxpayer dies? What are my rights as a taxpayer? Things like that. So that's going to add a lot more content, and it would be helpful on a TOC so people could scan the table of contents, find the area that they need, and then go to that section immediately. Now, there's suggested revisions on page 335, and that's what I've copied here. They really want to focus on making this document more user-friendly. So how do we do that? We try to make it more personal, we try to make it friendly, and that's going to make information more accessible. And we also want to look at these suggestions that they made throughout. So make sure that you are reading through this article. Make sure that you're hitting key areas where especially these tables are, because those really sum up what they're trying to explain with the changes. And I do want to point out in a couple areas where they change from a serif font to a sans serif font. There's going to be a discussion on typography this week, but a lot of people consider a sans serif font much more informal. So a serif font can be professional and formal and maybe a little rigid, and sans serif fonts are considered a bit more informal, it's a little bit more relaxed, it's a little bit more personable, which is what Matchett and Ray are really suggesting here. Now, Matchett and Ray also talk about readability in this case study, and they try to make the information that they present more readable to the user and just something that's shorter, more concise, and that anyone, well, not anyone, but a variety of literacy levels can read. So you can see the changes from the original with the IRS. We're going from Congress established this fund to support public financing, where they're saying Congress set up this fund to help pay for presidential. You can see it's a little bit more relaxed. It's on a bit of a lower level. The words are easier to understand. Sometimes they're shorter. So instead of saying established, we're saying set up. So if there was someone that maybe doesn't have the strongest vocabulary, instead of established, we have set up. So it might be a little bit easier for them to read. Again, this is a document that's going to a lot of different people. So we can't assume that everyone will know what all of the terms that are present here means. And you can see that they went from 80 words to 64 words. I don't think the big concern is on the space that they were able to conserve. I think it's more about using language that is understandable. Now, I wanted to pause here and point out another resource that is great for you guys, and that's plainlanguage.gov. And this actually goes back to 1990, so it's actually coming after Matchett and Ray, very shortly after, and it's something that's still in effect today. And it's an effort to make government communications in clear, plain language for users. So I pulled this quote from their website. Plain language makes it easier for the public to read, understand, and use government communications. So that's really the goal of any government agency who's putting out communications. They need their users to be able to read, understand, complete forms if they have to do that, or at least understand the form to understand what they have to do, what their requirements are. And it's something that can really affect the usability. So that's definitely a good website to check out. And also, just to kind of summarize the end of the article, the IRS did end up implementing some of those changes that were recommended by Matchett and Ray. They did not do all of them, but it was definitely an effort towards improving the usability. Now, we're going to switch gears and go to Schriver, and now this is in 2003, 2004. So Schriver starts working on this in 2003, and this is her take on the IRS form. I believe it may have appeared in one of the TechCom journals, but you're going to find these documents in the course documents folder, and also a link to a website I want you to take a look at. There's a good blog post there that summarizes it. So we have about 4 items. There's the link to the article about what she did, there's the original form that I want you to look at, and then the revised form, and then a summary of what she actually did with the principles. So with Schriver's revisions, there were really mixed reactions from the community. Some people loved it. Some people thought, do you really want to do that? And the IRS also gave a reaction as well. They were very concerned over drastic changes because people are used to the form. It's got to be updated on computers, so any templates that people are using, there's retraining of employees, and all of these items add up to a bigger cost for the IRS. Of course, they want to make documents more usable, but they have to consider at what cost. That's something that when you're making usability suggestions for the website that you're looking at, your client would be considering when you gave them a suggested revision. Would they be able to implement all of them? Probably not. But if they can implement a few of them that make someone's experience better, that's a great benefit. That's really been my experience in the professional world with software documentation as well. You can't always do all the things you would love to do. You can't always get the newest tool as soon as it comes out. So there's compromises to be made. If you can implement 50% of the changes, that's still a win. You can still make that document a little bit better for someone else that has to look at it. So I want you to make sure that you go back, look at the original, and then look at the revised. And which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the original one from the IRS, or do you like Schriver's document? Is that more usable? There's also a good graphic listed in there that's going to point out a few more areas that she changed. Then after you do that, I want you to take a look at the 10 principles that Schriver applied. That document's also on their drive. Do they make sense? It may or may not, or maybe you agree with some of them and not all of them. That's perfectly acceptable. This course is really about evaluating the different principles and looking at the ones that you can put in your toolbox for your professional career or your career in the future or any other projects that you might work on at Drexel. So evaluate whether they make sense and then evaluate whether you can use them in your practice or not. What pieces would you take with you? Now, we're not going to talk about this on the discussion board this week because I have another topic that I really want us to discuss on typography, which is you could have an entire course on typography. It's a very interesting topic, and I wish we could do a little bit more on the changes that are made through typography, but I do want us to discuss that on the board. So the questions that I'm asking here are more for you to think about rather than respond to me with. Of course, you can always let me know what your thoughts are on any of the discussion boards or in the Ask Your Professor section. But our focus for the discussion board is really going to be on typography. But I think it's important to think about these things. And as I said before, keep them in your toolbox and use them over time. Again, it's maybe you can only implement a handful of changes. It's still going to be better than what you originally have. There's always room to improve documents. So this is going to end this lecture for week 8. As I said before, reach out to me with any questions. I know we're getting towards the end and we're tired and there's a lot of projects and a lot of you have classes and work, but keep pushing at it. I've really appreciated all the work that you guys are doing and the discussions that you're having on the discussion board. So I look forward to talking with you this week. Bye, guys.